The IDE is a developer's most important tool. We use our IDEs every day, and we get so used to the way it works that our fingers automatically know what to do before our brain even catches up with us. However, we get so used to using the IDE in a particular way that we can feel like there's nothing else left to learn. I'm going to show you some tips for using IntelliJ IDEA, and I bet there's something here that you didn't know. Hello, I'm Trisha Gee. Welcome to the Continuous Delivery channel, where we continuously deliver content for professional programmers to level up. If you like the tips in the video, click like and subscribe for more like this. In today's video, I'm going to show you some of my favorite IntelliJ IDEA tips. These are specifically tips around using the editor for writing code. Some of these tips you will already know and some will be new. The tips that you know will be different to the tips that other developers know. This is why it's so important for us to continuously share the stuff that we know with each other so that we can all level up together. The first feature I want to look at is live templates. I'm not going to start from the beginning, I'm going to start from my favorite feature. A live template is a special code, a special set of letters you type into the IDE to get it to do something, to generate some code for you. Let me show you some examples. If you type in main, for example, it will create you your main method, your public static void main. You can just as easily use public static void main, whichever one is easiest for you to remember. Another one I use all the time is out for system out, so I can print out hi or whatever here. Live templates also include a number of different ways to iterate over your code. You can type for I to create an iteration loop, so you can just type 100 and then type sout I, for example. Probably my favorite way of using live templates to iterate over a variable or over a collection of items is to use the live template iter. This will pick one of your iterables that's in your code right now and will automatically create the boilerplate to iterate over it, including assigning a name to each one of the variables you're creating. So I would just press enter on those, and then if I want to print out each of those integers, I can use another live template, sout v, to automatically print out, I can select any of these variables, to automatically print out the name of the variable and the variable value itself. This is pretty useful as it is. It becomes even more useful really if you have more than one iterable. So let's say we're going to create a list of, let's say, letters. IntelliJ's full line code completion gives me this option, which is quite nice. This is machine learning code completion, but is not the AI assistant and doesn't dial outside of your IDE for suggestions. It will just do that locally. So let's assign that to, let's call this letters. Now if I do iter, it gives me the option of which one of these things I want to iterate over. This is probably one of my most used live templates. Let's talk a little bit about code completion. Now, you're probably thinking, I use code completion all the time. What is there to learn about code completion, specifically in the case of basic code completion? What I want to show you is some effective ways to use code completion. Sometimes we find ourselves in the middle of a method like this one, and what we want to do is change the method that we've called, using the suggestions which are relevant for here. If we invoke code completion with control and space, we get, as you'd expect, a whole bunch of different suggestions. Normally, what we would do is press enter on that suggestion. But then that leaves us with this weird thing where we end up with the code that was previously on the line being tagged onto the end of this line. What you really want to do in this case is probably, let's say we want to choose print instead of println, what you really want to do is press tab. This will overwrite the existing method and keep the existing method arguments from the previous one. This way we don't have to go back and delete the stuff that we don't need anymore. There are some other ways for selecting the suggestions from code completion which might also help. Let's do list of again. Instead of pressing enter or tab, we can press control and full stop or period, and it will select the item and append a period on the end and then drop down the next set of suggestions. So this way we can do chained method calls very quickly. Now my favorite type of completion, postfix completion. Every time I put something on social media about postfix completion, everyone goes mad about it. It's really helpful, it's something we quite often forget about, and yet it's really nice. Let me show you. Let's uncomment this line. Now, if I press a dot here, obviously I get all the suggestions of methods I can call on a string. If I press up instead of going down, I see all these things which are called Postfix Completion. These are not methods that you're actually calling on the class itself. These are like live templates that you call after the thing that you want to call it on, and it will create some code for you. So some of my favorites here are not null, to check if it's null. It will automatically wrap your expression in a null check and then put an if around that and then put you in the right place. Just creates all the boilerplate for common things. Another one I like is cast, which I don't necessarily need for a string, but you can imagine if you're pulling a value off a list and you want to cast it to something specific, it puts all of your braces around it and puts it all in the right shape so that you can actually do what you need to do. Here, for example, let's cast it to, let's just do something stupid, cast it to object, and then when I press enter, it will take my caret back to the end of the line, so I don't have to worry about like going backwards and casting and going forwards. That's the purpose of postfix completion. It always keeps you typing forwards, even if the thing that you want to do is at the beginning of the expression you just typed. Let's look at another example. I like Sout for this as well. So we can also call system.out.println using postfix completion. So it will wrap my variable inside a system.out call. I'm almost reluctant to mention AltEnter. I assume that most Java developers are using AltEnter on their code anytime they want to do anything to it. Most commonly, we see it for errors. If I have a compilation error in my code, I can press AltEnter, and IntelliJ IDEA will give me a whole bunch of suggestions to help me fix that error. In this case, I can try and get IntelliJ IDEA to fix the left-hand side or the right-hand side, or there might be other options which will get the compiler to stop complaining. That's probably the most common use. I really like it for a feature called inspections. This is where IntelliJ IDEA suggests better ways of doing the code. I used inspections extensively when I was learning Java 8 because it really helps you to embrace new ways of coding when you're not familiar with them. So if I press Alt-Enter on this yellow code here, it tells me I don't have to use a lambda here, I can actually use a method reference. And so this way I can get used to using, at that time, newer features of Java the language. I use this nowadays for doing things like converting data classes into record classes and so on. It's also useful when you find potential areas of the code that could be cleaned up. So this is a bit different to errors, and this is a bit different to suggestions for new coding constructs. This is, I don't think you meant to do this, so you can use it to delete unused code, for example. But it's not just about fixing errors, it's also about reshaping your code. So I use it quite a lot when I find code which I'm like, well, I wonder if there's a better way of doing that. It's particularly effective for things like loops and common constructs, different ways of doing stuff. So if I press Alt and Enter on 4, it gives me the option of changing it to a stream operation if I want to. I can remove the braces if I want to, but I can also do things like reverse the direction of the loop. So if I see a loop or I see a structure in my code which I think maybe there's a slightly better way of doing it, I can press Alt-Enter onto it and it will give me a different way of doing that code. Quite often, once I've done that, if I press Alt-Enter again, it will allow me to reverse the decision and go the other way. So for example, I can now turn this back into a loop again. I have 5 more features I want to show you. The ones I've just shown you are the ones I use all the time. Most of the next ones are nice to haves that I quite often use but don't use every single day. But right at the end is a must-have shortcut that you must know. Now is a great time to take a short break to thank our sponsors, Equal Experts, Transfic, and Tuple. All of these companies have products and services that are complementary to the content that we cover on this channel. Links are in the description. Please take a look. Firstly, let's talk about cutting a line without selecting it. This is an editor trick that I use quite a lot. It's actually one of the reasons why I write a lot of prose in IntelliJ IDEA. I tend to write my blog posts and even some of my creative writing in IntelliJ IDEA. And the reason is because if I have the cursor on a line, I can cut this whole line by pressing Command and X without having to select it. It's a small thing, it doesn't save you a lot of time, but it does save you having to go all the way to the start of the line or try and make sure you select the whole line with the carriage return and all the rest of it. So if I'm on here and I press Command X, then I have already just cut the whole line and it's there without me having to move my cursor around. The next feature is MultiCut. First time I saw this, I thought, why would a Java developer need this? I can totally see why it's helpful for things like XML files or properties files, but for Java files I haven't used it so much. Now I use it all the time. For example, if I want to change all of these fields to be final, I can press Option, press it a second time and hold it, and then press the down key to drag my cursor down the line of all of these lines. And then I just type final and it appears on all of those lines. I can even go to the end of the line and do the same thing on all of these lines. Now, I'm going to call this my favorite feature of IntelliJ IDEA, but I'm fairly certain I've already called some of the others my favorite feature of IntelliJ IDEA. This is, however, one of my favorite things about IntelliJ IDEA and one of the reasons why I use it all the time for writing. It has a clipboard history. Instead of doing just a single paste of the one thing on the clipboard, which hopefully we'll find that was the line that we cut earlier, we can actually do, instead of just doing Command V, we do Command Shift V, and this gives us a whole list of things that we've pasted in here before. So I can basically select any code that I copied inside IntelliJ IDEA, not everything from outside the IDE, but anything I copied inside IntelliJ IDEA is here on the clipboard history. So I can use this to get something back that I copied before. And you can use this deliberately too. I quite often go into a file and cut 3 or 4 different lines of code, one after another, knowing that the last one will overwrite the previous one because I have clipboard history to use to bring it back where I want it to be. Now I want to give a quick shout out to the formatting capabilities of IntelliJ IDEA. For example, if I have a badly formatted method like this, everything's all over the place, some things have braces and other things don't, I press Command, Option and L and it will format it for me. I can, however, use Alt and Enter on that to adjust code style settings, and I can force braces as well if that's something that I want. So I definitely want braces on my if statements, and IntelliJ IDEA will show me the preview of what that will look like, and if I save it, it will apply those formatting settings. The nice thing about using Alt to Enter there as well is that I can change the formatting settings which are relevant to just this piece of code instead of all formatting settings across the whole IDE. Formatting is a big topic and it's something I'm particularly interested in because I really like my code to look a particular way. When you're formatting in IntelliJ IDEA, you can optionally bring up the reformat file dialog. This allows you to not only select which code you want to format, but it also allows you to do other stuff like rearrange your code and clean up code and so forth. So there's so much more to reformat code than just changing and fixing your indentation. I promised you one more tip that you must know, and that tip is search everywhere. Search everywhere allows you to search everywhere inside the IDE. It's pressing Shift twice, Shift. It'll bring up the search everywhere dialog. By default, if I start typing something like format, it gives me in the drop down the files that might contain this word. It also gives me settings that also contain this word. So I can look for this anywhere in the settings, in the name of methods, in the class names. So anything I'm kind of interested in. Down here, it also shows me Git commits, which have this message too. If I want to narrow it down, I just tab across. Here it shows me the class names. Here it shows me files, which might not be classes. Here it shows me symbols, which includes method names. Here it shows me actions like reformat code. Here it shows me any Git commits which match that text. And here is full text search, so it will look for that anywhere. Search everywhere is invaluable, not just for navigation, but also for finding settings, for applying things quickly. Instead of having to open up another dialog and do something, you can usually type something in search everywhere and call the thing you want to do from inside there. Thanks for watching. If you want to learn more about some of the tips we covered here, there are links in the description. And stay tuned for an upcoming IntelliJ IDEA announcement. And remember, if you like the content here, please consider supporting us on Patreon.